You know what's worse than fighting cancer? Fighting it alone while your own family treats your survival like an inconvenience. I'm about to tell you how my mother's reaction to my recovery taught me that sometimes the people who should love you most are the ones who hurt you deepest. Hi, I'm Sarah. Hi. I'm 32, a certified public accountant from Ohio, and I just learned that beating cancer doesn't automatically beat the toxicity in your family. The room went silent. Not the good kind of silent where people are processing happy news. The uncomfortable, awkward kind where you realize you've just said something that made everyone wish they were anywhere else. I had practiced this moment for weeks, standing in front of my bathroom mirror, trying different ways to share the news that would change everything. I'm cancer-free. The doctors say I beat it. I'm in remission. Each version felt like it should come with confetti and tears of joy, like in those heartwarming commercials where families hug and cry happy tears. Instead, I got 23 pairs of eyes staring at me like I had just announced I was joining a cult. My mother, Margaret, sat in her usual spot at the head of the dining table, her perfectly manicured fingers drumming against her wine glass. She had that look, the one she'd perfected over 32 years of making me feel like everything I did was either not enough or too much. "Now you want attention," she whispered. But in that way mothers do, where everyone can hear it perfectly. My cousin Lisa actually looked down at her phone. My brother Mark suddenly became very interested in his mashed potatoes. Aunt Carol cleared her throat and asked someone to pass the salt, as if I hadn't just shared the most important news of my life. You have to understand, this wasn't some random family dinner. This was our annual Thanksgiving gathering, the one event where all 30-plus members of our extended family crammed into my parents' house to pretend we actually liked each other. I had specifically waited for this moment because I thought it would mean something. I thought they'd care. The diagnosis had come 18 months earlier, right after my 31st birthday. Breast cancer, stage 2, the kind that makes you Google survival rates at 3 in the morning and then immediately regret it. I remember calling my mother first, expecting, well, I'm not sure what I expected. Concern? Support? Maybe even a, "my poor baby," or an offer to come stay with me during treatment. Instead, she sighed, actually sighed, and said, "Well, these things happen. Your grandmother had cancer too, you know. She didn't make a big fuss about it." That should have been my first clue. During the 8 months of chemotherapy, I learned to navigate the healthcare system alone. I drove myself to treatments, sitting in those beige recliners for hours while poison dripped into my veins, watching other patients with their families, their spouses, their children holding their hands and bringing them blankets. I brought myself blankets. Don't get me wrong, I had friends who stepped up. My coworker Jennifer drove me to 3 appointments when I was too sick to drive. My neighbor Mrs. Chen brought me soup twice. But family, the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, they had better things to do. My mother visited exactly once, spent 20 minutes criticizing my housekeeping, and left because she had a book club meeting. My brother called every few weeks to ask how I was doing, but always in that hurried way that made it clear he was checking a box, not actually wanting to know. The worst part wasn't the loneliness, though. It was the way they made me feel guilty for being sick, like I had chosen cancer as some kind of elaborate attention-seeking scheme. When I lost my hair, my mother's first comment was, "Well, at least now you'll appreciate having good hair when it grows back." When I missed my nephew's birthday party because I was too weak from treatment, my sister-in-law passive-aggressively posted about how some people always have excuses. But I survived. Against odds that honestly weren't great, with treatments that made me feel like I was dying to avoid dying, I beat it. The doctors used words like remarkable recovery and excellent prognosis. I thought maybe, just maybe, my family would see what I had been through and realize they had failed me when I needed them most. I thought wrong. Standing in that dining room, looking at faces that ranged from bored to annoyed, I realized something that changed everything. They weren't happy I survived because they had never been worried I might not. My survival was inconvenient to them because it meant they couldn't paint me as the dramatic family member who always makes everything about her. It meant they had to face the fact that I had gone through something genuinely terrible, and they had chosen to be absent for it. "Sarah, honey," my Aunt Patricia said in that condescending tone she'd perfected, "we're all very happy you're better, but maybe we could talk about something more pleasant. It's Thanksgiving." More pleasant. My recovery was unpleasant dinner conversation. That's when I felt something shift inside me. Not sadness, I had used up all my sadness during those long nights when the chemo made me too sick to sleep. Not anger, exactly. Though there was definitely some of that brewing. No, what I felt was clarity. For 32 years, I had been trying to earn their love, their approval, their basic human decency. I had been the good daughter, the responsible one, the one who always showed up, always remembered birthdays, always tried to keep the peace. And when I needed them most, they had shown me exactly how little all of that meant. But here's the thing about surviving cancer. It gives you a very specific type of perspective. When you faced your own mortality and come out the other side, you stop caring about a lot of the bullshit that used to seem important. As an accountant, I'm good with numbers, patterns, and finding discrepancies. And sitting there, watching my family act like my survival was an interruption to their green bean casserole, I started calculating something different than tax returns. I started calculating exactly what it had cost me, over the years, to be the daughter and sister and niece they clearly didn't want anyway. The gifts, the time, the emotional energy, the forgiveness for their small cruelties, the excuses I had made for their selfishness. I had been keeping their books for free for decades, both literally and figuratively, and the ledger was showing a pretty significant imbalance. My mother was still whispering to my Aunt Carol, something about how some people never outgrow needing to be the center of attention. She thought I couldn't hear her, but after months of sitting in quiet treatment rooms, your hearing gets pretty sharp. I smiled then. Not a sad smile or an angry smile, but the kind of smile I'd learned to wear during client audits when I'd found exactly what I was looking for. "You know what?" I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're absolutely right, Mom. I do want attention." The room got quiet again, but this time, I was the one controlling the silence. I want the attention I deserved when I was bald from chemo and throwing up every day for 8 months. I want the attention normal families give when someone they love is fighting for their life. I want the attention that basic human decency would have provided. I picked up my purse from the back of my chair. But since that ship has sailed, I guess I'll just have to find attention somewhere else. I walked to the door, then turned back one more time. "Oh, and Mom, thanks for teaching me something really important today. You taught me that I've been doing your taxes wrong for the past 10 years. The look of confusion on her face was almost worth the 32 years of disappointment. Almost. The drive home from my parents' house usually took 25 minutes. That night, I sat in their driveway for 10 of those minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, watching the warm glow from their windows and listening to the muffled sounds of conversation that had resumed the moment I left. They were probably relieved. Sarah, the drama queen, had finally left, and now they could go back to discussing football and Black Friday shopping plans without having to pretend they cared about my medical miracle. But I wasn't thinking about their relief. I was thinking about taxes. See, here's something most people don't know about being the family accountant. You end up knowing everything. Every income source, every deduction, every financial secret that people think they're hiding. For the past decade, I had been doing taxes for half my extended family, usually for free because family helps family, according to my mother. I knew that my brother Mark had been claiming his girlfriend's kids as dependents, even though they didn't live with him more than half the year. I knew my mother had been writing off personal expenses as business costs for her little craft shop that barely made any money. I knew my uncle had been hiding income from his side contracting jobs. I knew my cousin had been claiming educational expenses for classes she never actually took. And I had been letting it slide because they were family. But sitting in that driveway, feeling the weight of their indifference settling over me like a heavy blanket, I realized something important. I had been enabling people who wouldn't cross the street to help me if I was on fire. The funny thing about surviving cancer is that it strips away a lot of illusions. When you're lying in a hospital bed at 2 a.m, unable to sleep because the steroids are making your heart race, you have a lot of time to think about your life, about the people in it, about what actually matters. I had spent so many of those nights thinking about my family, missing them, wishing they were there. I had made excuses for them in my head. Mom's just not good with medical stuff. Mark has his own problems. Everyone deals with stress differently. But the truth was simpler and uglier. They just didn't care enough to inconvenience themselves for me. By the time I got home to my little townhouse, I had made a decision. I was done being their free accountant. And I was definitely done being their emotional punching bag. But I wasn't going to make a scene or send angry texts or try to explain why their behavior hurt me. I had tried explaining my feelings to these people for 32 years, and clearly, it wasn't working. Instead, I was going to do what I do best. I was going to let the numbers speak for themselves. I spent that entire weekend going through files, 10 years of tax returns, receipts, documentation, and records for 15 different family members. As a CPA, I keep meticulous records. It's basically a professional requirement. Every conversation about deductions, every receipt I had questioned, every time I had bent the rules to help them save money. What I found was worse than I had remembered. My mother's business had claimed over $40,000 in fraudulent deductions over the past 5 years. My brother had been committing dependent fraud to the tune of about $6,000 per year. My uncle's unreported income totaled nearly $30,000 over 3 years. The list went on and on. I had been complicit in tax fraud for a decade, all in the name of family loyalty. But here's the thing about being a CPA. We have professional obligations. We're supposed to report fraudulent tax preparation. We can lose our licenses for knowingly filing false returns. I had been risking my career for people who couldn't be bothered to send me a get well card. Sunday night, I drafted a letter. Not to my family, to the IRS. I didn't send it immediately. I'm not impulsive, despite what my family might think about my attention-seeking cancer announcement. Instead, I did what any good accountant would do. I ran the numbers. If the IRS audited these returns based on my information, the penalties and back taxes would be substantial. My mother alone would probably owe close to $60,000, plus penalties and interest. My brother would lose his earned income credit for the next 10 years. My uncle would face potential fraud charges. It would destroy them financially. And you know what? I felt absolutely nothing about that prospect. Not guilt, not satisfaction, just emptiness. Like looking at a spreadsheet with errors that needed to be corrected. Monday morning, I went back to work for the first time since my final cancer treatment. My colleagues were wonderful. They had decorated my office with welcome back signs and brought me flowers. My boss, Patricia, actually teared up when she hugged me. These people, who were technically just professional acquaintances, had shown me more care and concern during my treatment than my own family. "How are you feeling?" Patricia asked during our check-in meeting. "Honestly, clearer than I've felt in years," I told her. And it was true. The brain fog from chemo was gone, but more than that, the emotional fog of trying to maintain relationships with people who fundamentally didn't care about my well-being had lifted too. That afternoon, I called my mother. "Sarah," she said, in that overly bright voice she used when she was trying to pretend nothing was wrong. "How are you feeling, honey? You seemed a little emotional at dinner last night." Emotional? Like surviving cancer and wanting my family to acknowledge it was some kind of hormonal overreaction. "I'm fine, Mom. Actually, I'm calling about your taxes." "Oh, wonderful. I was hoping you'd have time to do them again this year. I know you've been busy with your situation, but tax season will be here before we know it." My situation? She couldn't even say the word cancer. "Actually, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. I won't be doing anyone's taxes anymore. I'm retiring from Family Financial Services, effective immediately." There was a pause. "What do you mean, Sarah? You know I don't understand all that tax stuff. And it would cost me hundreds of dollars to hire someone else." "Yes, it would. That's what professional services cost. But I'm your mother." "Yes, you are. And when your daughter was fighting for her life, you visited once and complained about my housekeeping." Another pause, longer this time. "Sarah, I don't understand why you're being so dramatic about this. People get sick all the time. You're fine now. People get sick all the time. You're fine now. 32 years of trying to earn this woman's love, and she had just summed up her attitude toward my survival in 2 dismissive sentences. "You're right, Mom. I am fine now. Better than fine, actually. Which is why I'm making some changes." "What kind of changes?" "The kind where I stop doing things for people who wouldn't do them for me." I could hear her breathing getting sharper. "Sarah Elizabeth, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this isn't like you." She was right. The old Sarah would have backed down by now, apologized for being dramatic, and agreed to do her taxes for free again. The old Sarah would have swallowed her hurt and tried to be the bigger person. But the old Sarah had never faced her own mortality and realized that life was too short to spend it begging for crumbs of affection from people who saw her as a convenience rather than a person. "You're absolutely right, Mom. This isn't like me at all. The old me would have let this go. The old me would have made excuses for why my own family couldn't be bothered to care whether I lived or died. But cancer has a funny way of showing you what actually matters. Now you're just being ridiculous. Am I? Let me ask you something, Mom. During my 8 months of treatment, how many times did you offer to drive me to an appointment? Silence. How many times did you bring me food when I was too sick to cook? More silence. How many times did you call just to check on me without me calling you first? Sarah, The answer is 0, Mom, 0 times. But you know how many times you asked me to do your taxes for free over those same 8 months? 3. Because even when I was bald and throwing up from chemo, you still saw me as more useful than valuable. I could hear her crying now, but not the kind of crying that comes from realizing you've hurt someone. The angry, frustrated crying of someone who's been called out and doesn't like it. I don't know why you're being so cruel, she whispered. Cruel. I was being cruel for pointing out that she had been absent during the worst period of my life. I'm not being cruel, Mom. I'm being honest. For the first time in 32 years, I'm being completely honest about what this relationship actually is. And what is it? Transactional. You need things from me, tax preparation, emotional labor, someone to blame when you need to feel better about yourself. And in exchange, you give me just enough attention to keep me hoping that maybe someday you'll actually love me the way a mother should love her daughter. I do love you. No, Mom, you love what I do for you. There's a difference. The line went quiet except for her sniffling. So what happens now? She asked finally. Now you find someone else to do your taxes. Someone who charges fair market rates. Someone who won't look the other way when you try to claim personal expenses as business deductions? I could practically hear her panic through the phone. What do you mean? I mean, I know about the 40,000 in fraudulent deductions, Mom. I know about the personal meals you claimed as business expenses. I know about the fake mileage logs and the equipment you never actually bought for the business. The crying stopped abruptly. Sarah, you can't what? Can't report tax fraud to the IRS? Actually, as a licensed CPA, I'm legally obligated to report fraudulent returns I've prepared. The only reason I haven't is because I've been prioritizing family loyalty over professional ethics. You wouldn't. The old me wouldn't. But the old me also thought her family would visit her in the hospital. The old me thought her mother would at least pretend to be happy about her survival. The old me was wrong about a lot of things. There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice was different, smaller. What do you want from me? I don't want anything from you anymore, Mom. That's the point. I'm done wanting things from people who have made it very clear they're never going to give them to me. So you're going to destroy our family over this? Our family. Like it was something worth preserving. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just stopping my participation in the fantasy that we were ever actually a family to begin with. I hung up before she could respond. Within an hour, my phone was buzzing with texts and calls. Mark wanted to know what I had said to upset Mom so much. Aunt Patricia was demanding I apologize. Uncle Robert was asking if I was having some kind of breakdown. I ignored all of them. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went for a walk. Not the careful, slow walks I had been taking during recovery, but a real walk. The kind where you swing your arms and breathe deeply and remember what it feels like to be alive and healthy and free. The November air was crisp, and for the first time since my diagnosis, I felt genuinely happy. Not relieved, not grateful, not cautiously optimistic. Actually happy. I was done trying to earn love from people who were fundamentally incapable of giving it. I was done making myself smaller to make them comfortable. I was done being their emotional support system while getting nothing in return. But I wasn't done yet. When I got home, there was a voicemail from my brother. Sarah, what the hell is wrong with you? Mom is in tears. She says you threatened to turn her into the IRS over some tax stuff. Look, I know you're going through something with all this cancer stuff, but you can't take it out on the family. Call me back so we can figure this out like adults. Cancer stuff. Like it was a phase I was going through, not a life-threatening disease I had survived. I deleted the message and opened my laptop. It was time to send that letter to the IRS. But first, I had some other letters to write. The first letter I wrote wasn't to the IRS, it was to myself. I know that sounds ridiculous, but hear me out. During cancer treatment, my therapist, Dr. Martinez, who I had started seeing when the isolation became unbearable, had suggested writing letters I'd never send as a way to process emotions. I had tried it a few times during chemo, usually tear-stained rants about how unfair everything was. This letter was different. It was a resignation letter from a job I'd never applied for, being my family's emotional caretaker and financial enabler. Dear Sarah, Effective immediately. You are relieved of the following duties: making excuses for people who treat you poorly, prioritizing other people's comfort over your own well-being, accepting scraps of attention and calling it love, and risking your professional reputation to save people money on taxes they should be paying anyway. Your new job description includes living authentically, setting boundaries that actually mean something, and remembering that surviving cancer makes you a badass, not a drama queen. Signed, the Sarah who refuses to die for people who wouldn't live for her. I printed it out and pinned it to my bathroom mirror, right next to the photo from my last chemo session. The one where I'm bald and exhausted, but smiling because I had just gotten the news that my tumors were shrinking. Then I wrote the letter to the IRS. It was professional, clinical, and thorough. I laid out every fraudulent deduction, every falsified document, every instance where I had prepared returns that I knew contained false information. I included copies of receipts, bank statements, and my own meticulous notes documenting conversations where family members had explicitly asked me to claim things they knew weren't legitimate. The letter was 17 pages long. Before I sealed the envelope, I made copies of everything and drafted individual letters to each family member whose taxes I had been doing. Not angry letters, that would be unprofessional. Just formal notifications that I would no longer be preparing their returns and that they should seek qualified representation for any future IRS correspondence. I was particularly proud of the letter to my brother. Dear Mark, please be advised that I will no longer be providing tax preparation services for you or anyone else in our family. Given the complexity of your recent returns, particularly regarding dependent exemptions, I strongly recommend you consult with a tax professional who specializes in family law. You may also want to review IRS Publication 501 regarding qualifying children and residency requirements. It's quite informative. Best regards, Sarah Mitchell, CPA, P.S. Thanks for calling my cancer stuff. Really helped me understand how much my life means to you. I couldn't resist that last part. Sue me, I'm human. The letter to my mother was longer and more detailed, but equally professional. I outlined every single fraudulent deduction she had claimed over the past 5 years, complete with IRS code violations and potential penalty calculations. At the end, I included a helpful list of qualified tax preparers in her area, along with their average fees. You'll find their rates quite reasonable. I wrote beg considering the value of keeping you out of federal prison. Maybe that was petty, but again, I'm human, and I had earned the right to a little pettiness. I mailed all the letters on Wednesday morning before work. The IRS letter went certified mail, return receipt requested. The family letters went regular mail because I wanted them to arrive at the same time the IRS started making inquiries. Timing is everything in accounting. Wednesday afternoon, my phone started ringing. I let every call go to voicemail. By Thursday evening, I had 23 missed calls and 47 text messages. I didn't read or listen to any of them. Instead, I had dinner with my friend Jennifer from work, the one who had driven me to chemo appointments when my family couldn't be bothered. You seem different, she said over pasta at our favorite Italian place. I mean, you look great, healthy and strong, but there's something else. You seem lighter. I stopped carrying other people's baggage, I told her. Turns out it was heavier than I realized. She laughed. Is that some kind of cancer survivor wisdom? Maybe. Or maybe it's just what happens when you finally stop trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it anyway. Jennifer knew about my family's absence during treatment. She had been one of the few people I had been honest with about how alone I felt. So when I told her about Thanksgiving dinner and my decision to stop enabling their tax fraud, she didn't look shocked. She looked relieved. Good for you, she said. Honestly, I've been waiting for you to realize that your family treats you like garbage. You deserve so much better. That night, I finally listened to my voicemails. The first few were from my mother, progressing from confused to angry to panicked. By the fourth one, she was crying and begging me to call her back. The fifth one was different. Sarah, I got your letter. I don't understand why you're doing this to us. I know you're angry about Thanksgiving, but this is going too far. Please don't destroy our family over a misunderstanding. I love you, honey. We all love you. Please call me. Love. She was using that word now. Funny how it suddenly appeared when she needed something from me. My brother's messages followed a similar pattern, but with more anger and less crying. By his third message, he was calling me vindictive and threatening to cut me out of the family completely, as if that wasn't exactly what I was hoping for. The last message was from my father, who rarely got involved in family drama. His voice was tired and sad, which almost broke my resolve until I remembered that he had been just as absent during my treatment as everyone else. Sarah, I don't know what's happening with you and your mother, but I think you should come home so we can talk this through. Fighting isn't going to solve anything, and I know you don't really want to hurt anyone. The thing is, he was wrong. I did want to hurt them. Not physically, I'm not a monster. But I wanted them to feel some fraction of the pain they had caused me. I wanted them to understand what it felt like to have people they counted on suddenly disappear. I wanted them to experience consequences for their actions for once in their privileged, self-centered lives. And I wanted them to understand that their daughter, the one they had ignored and dismissed and taken for granted, was not someone they could afford to lose. Friday morning, I got the call I had been expecting. Ms. Mitchell, this is Agent Rodriguez from the Internal Revenue Service Criminal Investigation Division. We received some information regarding potential tax fraud, and we'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss the details. My heart was pounding, but my voice was steady. Of course. When would be convenient? Are you available Monday afternoon? We'd prefer to meet in person. Absolutely. Should I bring anything specific? Just your records and any additional documentation you think might be relevant. This is a preliminary interview, but given the scope of what you've reported, we expect this will be a comprehensive investigation. After I hung up, I sat in my office chair for a long moment, staring at my computer screen. There was no going back now. By next week, my family would be dealing with a federal investigation that could result in criminal charges, financial ruin, and possible imprisonment. I felt nothing. No guilt, no second thoughts, no sadness. Just the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. That afternoon, my mother showed up at my office. I was in the middle of reviewing quarterly reports when my assistant, Kelly, knocked on my door. Sarah, your mother is here. She says it's urgent. I could see Mom through my office window, pacing in the reception area. She looked terrible. Hair disheveled, makeup smeared, wearing the same clothes she'd worn to Thanksgiving dinner. She looked like she hadn't slept. Good. Send her in, I told Kelly. But leave my door open. Mom rushed in like a hurricane, talking before she even sat down. Sarah, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for days. We need to talk about this misunderstanding. I got your letter, and I think there are some things you don't understand about the tax situation. I leaned back in my chair and studied her. This woman who had given birth to me, raised me, and then abandoned me when I needed her most. She looked frantic and desperate, and I felt absolutely nothing for her. What don't I understand, Mom? Well, you know, some of those deductions you mentioned, they're more complicated than they seem. I mean, I use part of my house for the business, and sometimes it's hard to separate personal expenses from business ones. $40,000 worth of hard-to-separate expenses. Her face flushed. You're exaggerating, it's not that much. I opened my laptop and pulled up a spreadsheet. January 2019, you claimed a business dinner at Romano's for $87. I have the receipt. It was your birthday dinner with Dad. February 2019, you claimed mileage to visit Aunt Carol in Columbus as a business trip. She doesn't have anything to do with your craft business. March 2019. Stop. She was crying now. Just stop. I know I made some mistakes, but I never meant to do anything wrong. You know I'm not good with this stuff. That's why I need you. Need, not love, not miss, not value. Need. You need me. I repeated. Interesting choice of words. You know what I mean. Actually, I don't think I do. Explain it to me. She wiped her eyes with a tissue from the box on my desk. Sarah, you're my daughter. I love you. This family loves you. I don't understand why you're trying to hurt us. When I was diagnosed with cancer, did you love me then? Of course I did. Show me. What? Show me how you loved me. Because I remember being alone in waiting rooms for 8 months. I remember calling you crying after my first chemo session and you telling me you couldn't talk because you were watching your show. I remember asking you to come with me to my surgery consult and you saying you didn't want to hear all that medical stuff. Her face was crumpling, but I kept going. I remember you visiting me once during 8 months of treatment and spending the entire 20 minutes complaining about my housekeeping and telling me I looked tired. I remember calling to tell you I was cancer-free, and you said, "That's nice, honey, but I'm running late for book club." I didn't know how to help. I'm not good with medical things. You didn't need to be good with medical things, Mom. You needed to be good with human things. You needed to show up. You needed to care more about whether your daughter lived or died than whether your floors were clean. She was sobbing now, ugly crying that made her mascara run down her cheeks. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know I wasn't there the way I should have been, but I was scared too. I didn't know what to say or do. So you did nothing. I was trying to give you space to heal. Space? I almost laughed. You gave me space, all right? You gave me so much space I could have died in it and you wouldn't have noticed until tax season came around. That's not fair. Fair? I stood up, and she actually flinched. You want to talk about fair? Let me tell you what's fair. Mom, fair is you experiencing some consequences for treating your daughter like a convenience instead of a person. Fair is you understanding that actions have results. Fair is you learning that you can't ignore someone when they need you and then expect them to be available when you need them. So you're going to destroy our family over this. You're going to ruin our lives because your feelings got hurt. My feelings got hurt. Like I was a toddler throwing a tantrum because someone wouldn't share their toys. I'm not destroying anything, Mom. I'm just stopping my participation in a system where I give everything and receive nothing. You want to know what's destroying our family? The fact that when I announced I had survived cancer, your first thought was that I was being dramatic. The fact that you see my recovery as attention-seeking instead of miraculous. The fact that you're more upset about potential tax penalties than you ever were about my potential death. She was quiet for a moment, then looked up at me with something that might have been hope. So what do I need to do? How do I fix this? Even then, even in that moment, she was looking for a transaction. What could she give me to make me go back to being the daughter who absorbed her selfishness and asked for nothing in return? You can't fix this, Mom. That's what you don't understand. This isn't a problem with a solution. This is a relationship that never actually existed, and I'm finally admitting it. But I'm your mother. No, you're the woman who gave birth to me. There's a difference. She stared at me like I had slapped her. How can you say that? Because it's true. A mother shows up when her child is fighting for her life. A mother cares more about her daughter's survival than her daughter's housekeeping. A mother doesn't whisper, "Now you want attention," when her child shares the best news of her life. I walked around my desk and stood in front of her. You want to know what's really destroying our family, Mom? The fact that it was never a family to begin with. It was just a group of people who shared DNA and holiday dinners, but who never actually loved each other enough to sacrifice anything meaningful. That's not true. Prove it. Show me one time, just one, when you put my well-being ahead of your own convenience. She opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. When you were little. I'm not talking about when I was little and you were legally obligated to keep me alive. I'm talking about as an adult. Show me one time when you chose to support me when it cost you something. She couldn't. We both knew she couldn't. So here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to leave my office. You're going to find a qualified tax professional to help you deal with the IRS investigation that's coming. You're going to stop calling and texting me. And you're going to accept that your daughter, the one you ignored when she was dying, is no longer available to clean up your messes. Sarah, please. I'll do better. I'll be the mother you need me to be. It's too late for that. You had 32 years to be the mother I needed you to be. You had 8 months of cancer treatment to show me you cared whether I lived or died. You had a Thanksgiving dinner to celebrate my survival instead of acting like it was an inconvenience. I walked to my office door and held it open. You missed every opportunity to be my mother when it mattered. I'm not giving you another one. She stood up slowly, clutching her purse like it was a life preserver. I love you, she whispered as she walked past me. No, I said quietly. You love the idea of me. You love having a daughter who does things for you and asks nothing in return, but you've never loved me enough to actually show up for me. She paused in the doorway. But what about forgiveness? What about family? What about consequences? What about accountability? She left without another word. I closed my office door and sat back down at my desk. My hands were shaking slightly. Adrenaline, not regret. Kelly knocked softly. You okay in there? I'm perfect, I called back. And for the first time in years, I meant it. Monday couldn't come fast enough. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp December air that makes you feel like anything is possible. I put on my best navy suit, the one I wore to court when I had to testify as an expert witness in financial fraud cases. It felt appropriate. The IRS office was exactly what you'd expect. Beige walls, fluorescent lighting, and the kind of atmosphere that made people nervous even when they hadn't done anything wrong. Agent Rodriguez was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. Her partner, Agent Chen, was younger and took notes on everything. Ms. Mitchell, thank you for coming in. Before we begin, I want to clarify that you're here as a witness and informant, not as a subject of investigation. Based on your letter and the documentation you provided, we believe you were coerced into preparing fraudulent returns by family members. I had expected this. That's partially correct. I was pressured by family members, but I wasn't coerced in the legal sense. I knew what I was doing was wrong. I did it anyway because I valued family relationships over professional ethics. Agent Rodriguez made a note. That's refreshingly honest. Most people in your situation try to claim complete innocence. I'm not completely innocent, but I'm here to make it right. We spent 3 hours going through everything. Every fraudulent deduction, every falsified document, every conversation where family members had explicitly asked me to lie on their returns. I had documentation for all of it. Emails, text messages, receipts, even audio recordings from a few particularly egregious conversations where my brother had laughed about beating the system. This is extremely thorough, Agent Chen said, reviewing my files. You've essentially built the entire case for us. I'm a CPA. Thoroughness is what I do. Agent Rodriguez leaned forward. Ms. Mitchell, I have to ask, what prompted you to come forward now? You've been preparing these returns for years. I thought about how to answer that. The truth was complicated and personal, but these people deserved honesty. I survived cancer recently. During my treatment, I realized that the people I had been protecting and helping didn't care enough about me to even pretend to be concerned about whether I lived or died. It gave me perspective on what I'd been enabling. Both agents looked surprised by my directness. I'm sorry you went through that, Agent Rodriguez said, and I'm glad you recovered. Thank you. The cancer was terrible, but it taught me something important. Life is too short to spend it protecting people who wouldn't protect you. Agent Chen looked up from his notes. Are you prepared for the consequences of this investigation? Your family members are likely facing significant penalties, and some may face criminal charges. I understand that. I also understand that I've been helping them commit federal crimes for a decade, and that ends now. And you're comfortable with potentially causing financial hardship for your family. I thought about my mother's tears, my brother's angry voicemails, the panicked texts I'd been ignoring all week. Agent Chen, when I was going through chemotherapy, I had to choose between paying for groceries and paying for prescription anti-nausea medication because my insurance wouldn't cover it. I ate peanut butter sandwiches for 3 weeks so I could afford the medication that kept me from throwing up constantly. During that same period, my mother claimed a $1,000 personal vacation as a business expense on her taxes, and my brother bought a new truck with money he saved from fraudulent tax refunds. I paused to let that sink in. They chose their financial comfort over my well-being when I was literally fighting for my life. I'm just returning the favor. Agent Rodriguez nodded slowly. I think we have everything we need. You should know that this investigation will likely take several months, possibly longer. Your family members will be contacted for interviews, and they'll have opportunities to respond to the allegations. Will they know the information came from me? Eventually, yes. In cases like this, the source of the investigation usually becomes apparent. I had expected that too. That's fine. I'm not hiding from this. As I was leaving, Agent Rodriguez stopped me. Ms. Mitchell, I want you to know that coming forward took courage. A lot of people wouldn't have been willing to hold their family accountable like this. A lot of people have families worth protecting, I replied. Mine isn't one of them. The drive home gave me time to think about what came next. My phone had been buzzing all morning. More calls and texts from family members who had probably figured out by now that something big was happening. I was done ignoring them. It was time for the final phase of my plan. That evening, I sent a group text to everyone whose taxes I had been doing. My mother, my brother Mark, my uncle Robert, my cousin Lisa, my aunt Patricia, and 3 other relatives who had been taking advantage of my free services and flexible ethics. The message was simple. By now, you've probably heard from the IRS. I wanted you to know that I was the one who reported the tax fraud I've been helping you commit for the past decade. I provided them with complete documentation of every fraudulent deduction, falsified document, and unreported income. I did this because when I survived cancer and needed my family's support, you showed me that I meant nothing to you. Consider this my resignation from being your unpaid accountant and emotional doormat. Good luck with the investigation. I hit send and turned off my phone. Within an hour, they were at my door. Not all of them, my mother, my brother, and my Uncle Robert. I could see them through the peephole, arguing among themselves on my front porch. I let them knock for 5 minutes before I opened the door. "Sarah, thank God," my mother said, pushing past me into my living room. "We need to talk about this disaster you've created." Disaster I'd created. Not disaster they'd created by committing tax fraud for years, but disaster I'd created by reporting it. "Hello to you too, Mom, Mark, Uncle Robert. Please, come in, make yourselves at home." My sarcasm was lost on them. They were too panicked to notice tone. "Sarah, what the hell have you done?" Mark was red-faced and angrier than I'd ever seen him. "Do you have any idea what this is going to cost us? Roughly $80,000 in back taxes and penalties for Mom, about $35,000 for you, and probably $50,000 for Uncle Robert, plus potential criminal charges for all of you. Did I miss anything?" Uncle Robert looked like he was having chest pains. "Sarah, you can't be serious about this. We're family." "Are we?" Because when I was going through chemotherapy, family seemed to be something I was doing alone. "That's completely different," Mark snapped. "That was personal stuff. This is destroying people's lives over taxes." Personal stuff. My brother had just referred to my cancer as personal stuff. "You're right, Mark. My cancer was personal stuff. Just like your tax fraud is personal stuff. The difference is, my personal stuff was life-threatening, and yours is just illegal." My mother sat down on my couch without being invited and put her head in her hands. "Sarah, I know you're angry with us about Thanksgiving, but this is going too far. You're going to destroy our family." "Mom, I need you to listen to me very carefully. There is no family to destroy. A family shows up for each other. A family cares when someone is sick. A family celebrates when someone survives a life-threatening disease instead of acting like it's an inconvenience." I sat down across from her, close enough that she had to look at me. "What we have isn't a family. It's a group of people who tolerate each other and occasionally gather for holidays to maintain the illusion that we care about each other. But when push came to shove, when I actually needed you, you weren't there. I didn't know how to help," she whispered. "You knew how to ask me to do your taxes while I was in treatment. You knew how to ask me to falsify deductions to save you money. You knew how to use me when you needed something, but you didn't know how to be there when I needed something." Uncle Robert was pacing my living room like a caged animal. "So your solution is to send us all to prison. My solution is to stop enabling people who take advantage of me and then act surprised when there are consequences." Mark stood up abruptly. "This is insane. You've lost your mind. Cancer must have affected your brain or something, because the Sarah I know would never do something this vindictive." That was it. That was the moment when whatever small part of me that still cared about salvaging these relationships finally died. "You're absolutely right, Mark. The Sarah you know would never do this. The Sarah you know would have swallowed her hurt and continued doing your taxes for free while you called her cancer personal stuff. The Sarah you know would have made excuses for your absence during the worst period of her life and pretended it didn't matter." I stood up and walked to my front door, opening it wide. But that Sarah almost died. And when she survived, she realized that life is too precious to waste it begging for scraps of love from people who see her as a convenience rather than a person. "So what? You're cutting us off completely?" my mother asked, her voice breaking. "I'm freeing you from the burden of pretending to love someone you clearly don't actually care about. And I'm freeing myself from the exhausting job of trying to earn affection from people who were never going to give it." Uncle Robert stopped pacing. "Sarah, be practical here. If we go down for tax fraud, it's going to hurt the whole family. Your cousin's kids and your nephew. Stop. Just stop right there." I held up my hand. "Don't you dare try to make me responsible for the consequences of your actions. You committed fraud. You asked me to help you commit fraud. You did it knowing it was wrong because it saved you money. The fact that getting caught will hurt your family is your responsibility, not mine." "But you're the one who turned us in," Mark said. "And you're the ones who committed federal crimes, cause and effect, Mark. Look it up." My mother stood up slowly. She looked older than she had a week ago, fragile in a way I'd never seen before. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "Sarah, I know I failed you during your treatment. I know I should have been there more. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorrier than you'll ever know. But this is going to destroy us. Your father doesn't know yet, but when he finds out that his daughter turned in his wife for tax fraud, it's going to kill him. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you spent 5 years claiming fake business expenses. She flinched like I had hit her. I never meant for it to go this far. Which part? The tax fraud or ignoring your daughter's cancer? Both, she whispered. I never meant for any of this to happen. I looked at these 3 people, my mother, my brother, my uncle, standing in my living room, and I felt absolutely nothing for them. No anger, no sadness, no regret. Just the cool, professional detachment I felt when reviewing a particularly messy set of books. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to leave my house. You're going to hire qualified legal representation. You're going to cooperate with the IRS investigation. And you're never going to contact me again. Never. My mother's voice was barely audible. Never. No calls, no texts, no emails, no showing up at my work or my home, no sending other family members to guilt me into changing my mind, no Christmas cards, no birthday wishes, no funeral invitations, nothing. Mark was staring at me like he was seeing me for the first time. You really mean this, don't you? I've never meant anything more in my life. But we're family, Uncle Robert said, as if that magic word would somehow fix everything. No, we're not. We're strangers who happen to share some DNA. Family shows up for each other. Family cares about each other's well-being. Family celebrates each other's victories, instead of treating them like inconveniences. I walked to the door and held it open again. You failed every test of what family means. When I was diagnosed with cancer, you failed. When I went through treatment, you failed. When I survived, you failed. You've been failing me for 32 years, and I'm finally done pretending it doesn't matter. They filed out slowly. My mother last. She paused in the doorway and turned back to me. I love you, she said. No, you don't. And even if you did, it's too late. Love without action is just words, Mom. And your words stopped meaning anything to me a long time ago. I closed the door and locked it, then walked to my kitchen and poured myself a glass of wine. Through the window, I could see them standing in my driveway, talking in urgent, panicked voices. Then they got in their cars and drove away. I never saw any of them again. The IRS investigation took 8 months. My mother ended up owing $63,000 in back taxes and penalties. My brother lost his house when he couldn't afford the financial hit from his fraudulent refunds. Uncle Robert faced criminal charges and served 6 months in minimum security federal prison. I felt nothing about any of it. I did feel something about the other things that happened, though. I felt proud when I got a promotion at work 6 months later. I felt grateful when my friend Jennifer threw me a 1-year cancer-free party. I felt peaceful when I bought a little house with a garden where I could grow vegetables and flowers. I felt happy when I started dating David, a widower I met at a cancer survivors support group. He understood what it meant to face your mortality and come out the other side with a different perspective on what mattered. He had also learned that life was too short to waste on people who didn't deserve it. Do you ever regret it? He asked me one evening as we sat on my back porch, watching the sunset over my tomato plants. Which part? Cutting them off completely. The IRS thing. All of it. I thought about it seriously. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that they couldn't love me enough to show up when I needed them. I regret that I wasted 32 years trying to earn something they were never going to give me. I sipped my wine and watched a cardinal land on my fence. But I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret refusing to enable their selfishness anymore. And I don't regret choosing my own well-being over their comfort for once in my life. David nodded. He understood. That's the thing about people who've survived something terrible. They understand that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to participate in relationships that are slowly killing you. 2 years later, I heard through mutual friends that my father had died of a heart attack. I wasn't invited to the funeral, which was fine by me. I sent flowers with a card that said, "I'm sorry for your loss, because I was sorry. Not that he was dead, but that he had chosen to enable his wife's cruelty toward his daughter instead of holding her accountable." I also heard that my mother had to sell the house to pay her IRS debt, and that my brother had moved back in with her because he couldn't afford his own place anymore. I felt the same thing about that news that I had felt about everything else related to them for the past 2 years. Absolutely nothing. Sometimes people ask me if I miss having a family. The answer is no, because I never actually had a family to miss. What I had was a group of people who expected me to provide emotional labor and financial services in exchange for the privilege of being ignored and dismissed. What I have now is better. I have friends who show up, I have a partner who celebrates my victories. I have colleagues who respect my expertise. I have a life that belongs to me instead of being something I'm constantly trying to trade for scraps of love that never come. Most importantly, I have self-respect. I have the knowledge that when life tried to kill me, I survived. And when the people who were supposed to love me tried to diminish that survival, I refused to let them. I beat cancer. Then I beat the thing that was actually trying to destroy me. The belief that I had to earn love by accepting less than I deserved. The scar from my surgery is barely visible now. Just a thin white line that reminds me of what I survived. But the strength I gained from walking away from people who couldn't love me properly, that's permanent. And it's the best thing that ever happened to me. If you're reading this and recognizing yourself in my story, if you have people in your life who only show up when they need something, who treat your crises as inconveniences and your victories as attention-seeking, I want you to know something. You don't have to keep accepting that. You don't have to keep making yourself smaller to make other people comfortable. You don't have to keep trading your self-respect for relationships that exist only to serve other people's needs. You deserve to be loved by people who show up. You deserve to have your survival celebrated, not dismissed. You deserve to surround yourself with people who see your value, not people who only see your usefulness. Life is too short to spend it begging for love from people who have already shown you they're not capable of giving it. Take it from someone who almost died and then chose to live. The most radical thing you can do is refuse to participate in relationships that require you to diminish yourself. Choose yourself. Choose your peace. Choose your self-respect. The people who are meant to be in your life will make space for all of who you are. Everyone else is just taking up space that belongs to someone better. Trust me on this. I'm a cancer survivor, a family fraud reporter, and a woman who finally learned that she was worth more than the scraps she'd been accepting. And if I can learn that lesson, so can you. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away from people who refuse to see your worth. Sarah's story reminds us that survival isn't just about beating the disease. It's about refusing to let toxic relationships slowly poison the life you fought so hard to keep.